There are moments in life when a single act of kindness or a single word of warning can change the course of destiny. This is the story of a humble waitress who dared to speak out, risking everything to help a lonely, distraught millionaire despite their worlds seeming a million miles apart. She saw the storm brewing in his eyes, sensed his fragile heart behind the polished facade, and discovered a looming betrayal. In one fateful night, she set off a chain of events that would alter both their lives forever. Little did she know that her small warning would lead to an unimaginable, shocking gift the very next day. Ella Johnson's life revolved around the steady rhythm of footsteps, shuffling against the polished floors and the constant clatter of plates echoing through the narrow kitchen corridor. She had been working at the Gilded Lilies, a high-end restaurant in downtown Philadelphia, for about 3 years, an eternity in a fast-moving industry where staff turnover was practically a monthly routine. As the only child of a retired librarian from Scranton, Pennsylvania, Ella had always been the dependable sort, paying her bills on time, living frugally, and sending small sums back to help her mother every month. Though it was nearly midnight, the restaurant was still humming with a faint buzz. Business dinners often ran late, with CEOs nursing their expensive Cabernet Sauvignons while interns fetched them the correct data from a smartphone or laptop. Despite the humdrum of these nights, Ella had become adept at reading people. She could sense tension at a table before any voices were raised, detect heartbreak in an abrupt sigh, and even foresee a large tip from the glint in a customer's eye. She believed this skill was part of her superpower, pure empathy. That night, a reserved corner table had been booked by none other than Thomas Harrington, a name that made half the staff quiver in anticipation. Thomas was known as the reclusive millionaire, though rumor had it he was inching into billionaire territory with his skyrocketing chain of boutique hotels and philanthropic ventures. He rarely made public appearances, preferring quiet dinners among close friends or key stakeholders. On that evening, he arrived alone, a swirl of tension and quiet heartbreak chiseled into his expression. Ella, balancing her tray, loaded with a fresh bread basket and a delicate amuse-bouche, approached his table with polite calm. There was something haunted in Thomas's eyes, something that made her pause. He offered a tight smile, barely registering the taste of the amuse-bouche. After she served him, she tried to fade back into the background, as most waitstaff were taught. But the lingering sadness etched on his face drew her like a magnet. Just after serving him a second glass of wine, Ella heard him on a call. She didn't mean to overhear, but his voice, though hushed, carried in that secluded space. "We have a problem." "Yes, I'll handle it. Tomorrow." "No, you can't talk to me like that. I'm well aware what's at stake." His breath came shallow. She saw him pinch the bridge of his nose in frustration. His designer suit couldn't mask the weight on his shoulders. That was when their eyes briefly locked, startling in the mutual recognition of pain. Something told her that Thomas Harrington was on the brink of a significant betrayal, though she had no clue who the culprit might be or what business arrangement was unraveling behind the scenes. All she knew was that a storm was brewing, and Thomas wore the storm's fury like a second skin. She cleared her throat. "Mr. Harrington," she said, softly. "Would you like anything else?" Though she meant the standard question, there was a gentleness in her voice, an unspoken offer of moral support. He paused, studying her, as if calculating the possibility that she might read him. Then he shook his head. "No, thank you." He offered a polite smile and returned his gaze to the half-empty glass of wine. Yet in that moment, the unspoken bond was sealed. Ella understood that he was on the verge of heartbreak. Professional sabotage, maybe both. What started as a routine table service would soon drag her into the swirling tides of a high-stakes betrayal. Several tables needed attention. Ella was forced to move on, distributing desserts and coffee to giggling couples, yet her mind was tethered to the corner booth back where Thomas sat alone. She glimpsed him reading some document on his phone, each swipe of his finger loaded with frustration. Another call came in. Ella could see from his furrowed brow that the conversation wasn't pleasant. By the time the last guests, an elderly couple celebrating their anniversary, paid and left the dining area, had mostly emptied out. The glow of the chandeliers cast shadows on vacant tables. The night manager discreetly approached Ella. "Hey, do me a favor. Make sure Mr. Harrington's all set. Then close him out. We're wrapping up soon." After collecting the final plates from a neighboring table, Ella returned to Thomas. This time his face was buried in his hands. He was no longer on the phone. Instead, an untouched dessert, a rich chocolate torte, lay melting under the subdued light. She stepped closer, heart pounding with concern. "Mr. Harrington, is everything all right?" He looked up slowly, and for a moment anger sparked in his blue-grey eyes, as if she'd jolted him out of a private confession. Then the anger receded, and something like weary gratitude replaced it. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Just business." She felt a pang of sympathy. "If you need anything, let me know." He nodded, half smiling, before shifting his gaze to the torte he'd barely acknowledged. It happened so swiftly afterward. Ella heard a sharp ping from his phone, and without thinking she glanced at the screen, left face up on the table. In big, bold letters, she saw a message from a contact labeled, "Mallory, we need to talk immediately." She didn't mean to pry, but the notification preview read, "Thomas, the board is meeting tomorrow. Alan is cornering them. He wants to push you out." Ella's heart flipped. Thomas snatched his phone away, looking alarmed, but the damage was done. She'd read enough to confirm he was indeed facing a corporate betrayal. She parted her lips, ready to apologize for glimpsing the private message, but he sighed, an air of resignation in his voice. "You saw nothing," he said quietly, though not unkindly. Ella took a step back, unsettled. She had no right to meddle, but something inside, maybe her empathy, compelled her to speak. "I don't know exactly what's happening," she began in a hushed voice, mindful that the last few staffers were busily clearing the main dining area. "But sometimes the closest people around us have hidden agendas. If that's your situation, be careful. Trust your instincts." Thomas stared at her, half amused, half intrigued. "Are you in the business of giving millionaires advice, Ms. Ella?" "Ella Johnson," she replied. A faint flush crept into her cheeks at the directness of his question. "I'm just a waitress here. But I've seen enough to know that heartbreak and betrayal often come from those we believe in the most." He was silent for a long moment. It was a quiet hush, broken only by the distant sound of a busboy stacking dishes. Then, with a sigh, Thomas pulled out his wallet, setting more than enough cash to cover his bill and a generous tip on the table. "Thank you, Ella Johnson," he said solemnly. "I appreciate your concern." And with that, he left the echo of his footsteps fading into the night. Ella stood there, heart pulsing. Little did she know her simple words of warning had altered the course of events that would soon unfold. The following morning, Ella rolled out of bed in her tiny studio apartment on Spring Garden Street. She lived in a modest building surrounded by energetic college students renting rooms. The sound of cars honking and buses trudging down the road served as her alarm clock most days. Despite the routine, she couldn't shake the memory of Thomas Harrington's distress. While brewing a cheap cup of instant coffee, she mulled over the possibility that he was being betrayed by his associates. Maybe an attempt to dethrone him from his own empire. She wondered if the name Allen referred to Alan Pope, a known investor, rumored to be a key partner in Harrington's businesses. She remembered reading about him in a local business journal once, which mentioned that Alan and Thomas had become co-owners of a major boutique hotel chain, Gracewood Suites, in New York City. Ella's heart ached with worry. She had no illusions that her small, well-intentioned warning would save a man like Thomas Harrington from the cunning maneuvers of corporate sharks. Yet the entire experience made her restless. Who was Mallory? Possibly his legal counsel, maybe a board member, or just a friend. Thomas had seemed so vulnerable, so unlike the typical aloof millionaire. She felt compelled to do something, but short of barging into a high-profile board meeting, an absurd notion, there was no next step for someone in her position. Ella sipped her coffee, gazing at the small potted plant by her windowsill, a gift from her mom. Worrying about the wealthy is ridiculous, she chided herself. He has resources, attorneys, allies. He'll be fine. But her gut refused to quiet. Meanwhile, Thomas Harrington stood on the top floor of the Harrington Towers, a luxury building that housed his personal offices in the heart of Philadelphia. He stared out a floor-to-ceiling window as dawn cast a pale glow over the skyline. His jaw was tight with tension. He replayed the waitress's words in his mind. Sometimes the closest people around us have hidden agendas. If that's your situation, be careful. Trust your instincts. On any other day, he might have dismissed her caution as standard small talk. But she'd spoken with an earnest sincerity that lingered. Something about her eyes. They reminded him of a friend he used to trust implicitly before the corporate world had taught him to build walls. Mr. Harrington came a clipped voice from behind him. It was Mallory Tyson, one of his most reliable lawyers and longtime confidants. "We're ready for you. The board meeting is beginning in 5 minutes. Thomas turned to face her, smoothing down his suit jacket. "Mallory, did you manage to confirm who's fueling the hostility?" Her expression darkened. "We've got intel that Alan Pope has been working behind the scenes to sway several board members. He's highlighting the underperformance of one of our recent international ventures. He's basically suggesting you've lost your touch and that he's better suited to lead through the next phase." Thomas's face hardened. "And do you believe them?" She shook her head. "It's sabotage, Thomas. He's leveraging short-term dips and ignoring the bigger picture. You know the expansions in Berlin and Tokyo were always going to need a longer horizon to become profitable. The rest of the board must be convinced of that, too. But Alan is cunning. He's focusing on the fact that your philanthropic spending has been high and that it affects the bottom line in the short run." Thomas's chest constricted. He'd built his empire with integrity, focusing on a balance between profitability and philanthropy. Hearing that philanthropic efforts were used as ammunition against him felt like a deep betrayal of his core values. "All right," he said, straightening. "Let's see how they play this. Keep me posted on every angle." A flicker of hesitation crossed Mallory's face. "Thomas, be careful who you trust in there. The betrayal runs deeper than you think." He paused, remembering the waitress's words. Perhaps it was a sign. Back at the Gilded Lilies, Ella's day started off relatively calm until the lunch rush hit. The restaurant management had asked if she could also assist the daytime crew for a few hours to cover for a sick colleague. Eager for overtime, she agreed, though she felt a twinge of fatigue from her late shift the night before. Around noon, she recognized a tall, imposing figure stepping inside Daniel Myers, a prominent lawyer from the Myers and Jacobs law firm. Ella had served him once before, noticing at the time that he was in hushed conversation with a man who had repeatedly referred to Harrington's hotel expansions. She recalled a mention of Tokyo as well. So he's probably connected, she reasoned. Daniel sank into a plush seat at the bar, checking his phone. Ella could see the agitation in his face as he texted furiously. She drifted closer, feigning the typical bartender role, polishing glasses and arranging cocktail napkins. Then she overheard him speaking to someone on the phone. "Don't worry." The board meeting started. "If Alan can tip 3 more members, Harrington's done. Yes, that's the plan. We want him out by next quarter." Ella nearly dropped a cocktail glass. Her heart hammered in her chest. This wasn't speculation. It was a cold, calculated corporate takeover. She tried to keep her composure, continuing to polish glasses, as if oblivious, but her mind reeled. This was exactly what she'd sensed last night. She wanted to text Thomas right away, but she had no means of direct contact. She didn't know if she should talk to her manager or alert someone else. Yet how could a mere waitress intervene in a complex corporate coup? At noon, Ella caught a break from the bar. She disappeared into the staff corridor, rummaging through the pockets of her apron for the business card that Thomas had casually placed under his tip the night before. She remembered him dropping a small cream-colored card with his name embossed in gold. She had nearly mistaken it for a decorative place card, but something, maybe curiosity, had convinced her to keep it. Her fingers touched the stiff edge of the card. It read, "Thomas Harrington, Harrington Ventures." Beneath it, an office line and a personal phone number were printed in delicate script. Unsure if calling him directly was an overstep, she nonetheless clenched the card tight. In a tiny corner near the staff lockers, she pulled out her cell phone. Anxiety prickled her skin. She dialed the personal number first. It rang several times, no answer. She tried again, heart in her throat. Finally, it went to voicemail. She considered leaving a message, but hesitated. What would she say? "Hello. You don't really know me. I overheard some shady conversation that might destroy your entire career." It sounded ridiculous. Ella hung up, slumping against the wall. Then she tested the office number, which immediately led her to an automated directory. She navigated the system until an assistant answered Thomas Harrington's office. "How can I help you?" Ella cleared her throat. "My name is Ella Johnson. I have an urgent message for Mr. Harrington. Is there any way I can speak with him or Mallory Tyson?" The assistant sounded professionally indifferent. "Do you have an appointment or a reference number?" "No, it's, personal. I really need to warn him about Alan Pope. Something important that might be happening right now." "Could." The assistant cut her off. Her tone politely dismissive. "I'm sorry Mr. Harrington is in a board meeting. I'll have to take a message." Ella tried to continue. "Please just tell him the waitress said that Alan Pope is definitely behind the board's plan to oust him. He needs to act, now." There was a slight pause. "Miss, I'll pass it along. Thank you for calling." The call ended. Ella's breath shuddered as she realized how improbable it was that her message would ever reach Thomas in time. She stood in the corridor, her mind swirling with regret and hope in equal measure. High above Philadelphia's busy streets in the Harrington Ventures boardroom, a battle raged. On one side, Alan Pope, wearing a confident smirk, stood highlighting alleged mismanagement in Harrington's recent expansions. On the other side, Thomas Harrington, face grim but dignified, presented spreadsheets and data that validated the long-term vision. Mallory flicked through slides that demonstrated the robust forecasts for Tokyo, Berlin, and other international holdings. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice echoing around the polished table. "Thomas's commitment to philanthropic causes has garnered positive press and brand loyalty across these markets. This so-called frivolous expense is actually an investment in brand perception. It's too soon to declare it a loss." Alan let out a condescending chuckle. "Philanthropy is commendable, Thomas, but not at the expense of the shareholders' bottom line. We're behind schedule on returns. Our board members have a fiduciary duty to ensure profitable operations." An older board member, Ms. Catherine Delgado, sighed. "Alan, we must weigh public relations benefits too. It can be short-sighted to slash philanthropic spending that so clearly resonates with our consumer base." Undeterred, Alan pressed forward, leaning in with an air of self-assurance. "Thank you for your opinion, Catherine, but I have separate financial projections that show we'll remain in the red for at least 2 more quarters, unless we refocus on immediate revenue streams. Thomas, with all due respect, you're chasing a dream that hurts stock value." Thomas fought to maintain composure. "I'm not chasing dreams, Alan. I've built Gracewood Suites from the ground up, ensuring that every expansion had a clear path to profitability. The philanthropic branch is not simply an expenditure, it's a strategic differentiating factor in a saturated market. We focus on doing good, and our guests remain loyal." Alan kept pressing. "I move for a vote of no confidence in Thomas Harrington's continued leadership as CEO and chairman. Effective immediately." Gasps and murmurs rippled around the table. A wave of tension hung thick in the air. Mallory's eyes flashed with alarm. Thomas stared at Alan, recognizing the depth of betrayal. He'd once considered Alan not just a business partner, but a close friend who had supported the philanthropic mission, wholeheartedly at least. That's what he'd claimed for years. Now the mask was off, and the dagger was poised for Thomas's back. Before the vote could be forced, the door opened, and Thomas's assistant leaned in. She whispered urgently into Mallory's ear. Mallory's eyes flickered with surprise as she nodded. Thomas caught her gaze silently, asking, "What is it?" Mallory discreetly handed him her phone with the message the waitress from last night called. "Warned you about Alan. She says it's confirmed." Thomas's chest tightened with gratitude and shock. Ella Johnson. The waitress was still trying to protect him. This only solidified the reality that Alan was indeed orchestrating a coup. But in that critical moment, how could he use that intel? Thomas found himself momentarily drifting from the arguments around the table, remembering a piece of advice his father, the late Roger Harrington, had once given him. Never let fear drive you. Let strategy guide you. But if you find someone who cares, who sees your blind spots, treasure them. Strangely, Ella's act of concern reminded him of that paternal wisdom. When he refocused on the board, voices were raised. Several members were on the fence. Alan was pushing for an immediate vote with words that stung like barbs. "This is not personal, Thomas. We just need to ensure the business thrives." Thomas shot back. "It's entirely personal. Alan, because you stood by me for years, championing these expansions only to turn around and sabotage them from within." At that moment, Mallory stood and clicked a remote. The projection screen behind her changed, revealing detailed color-coded ledgers. "We just obtained new data," she said, voice ringing with conviction. "We have documentation that Alan Pope's investment firm has privately funded a competing chain in Tokyo, effectively profiting from any setbacks at Gracewood Suites. If you all look closely at page 6, you'll see the shell companies tied back to Alan's primary venture capital firm." An uproar followed, with board members flipping through printed documents now projected on the screen. Alan's face lost color. He tried to speak, stammering protests. "This is out of context. These are standard diversified investments. You can't prove sabotage." Mallory pressed a button on her remote, again revealing a set of suspicious emails. Some of them referencing direct attempts to slow or block Harrington expansions. Given the context, Mallory said coolly, "We can demonstrate that Alan's been actively undermining Gracewood Suites in Tokyo to push the board to vote Thomas out, ensuring his new partner chain thrives. The philanthropic angle was merely his smokescreen to distract from the real sabotage." A stunned hush claimed the room. Ms. Delgado glanced from the screen to Alan, eyes filled with disbelief. Another board member, Mr. Sampson, stood up abruptly. "Alan, how could you stoop to this level?" Thomas remained silent, letting the revelation sink in. He could hardly believe this last-minute evidence had come to him so dramatically. Mallory stepped closer to him, voice trembling with triumphant relief. "You were right. Someone outside the board gave us the final piece of the puzzle, told us where to look for these shell company connections. Your waitress might have been part of that puzzle, or maybe we were just lucky. Regardless, we caught him red-handed. Alan's betrayal lay bare. The vote of no confidence was abandoned. Instead, the board turned on Alan, outraged by his disloyalty and double-dealing. Hastily, they voted to expel him from any leadership role, pending a full investigation. A swirl of legal repercussions loomed for Alan Pope." Thomas locked eyes with Mallory, both stunned by the narrowness of their victory. In the back of his mind, Ella's earnest voice echoed, "Be careful. Trust your instincts." At the close of the board meeting, Thomas retreated to his office, still reeling. The immediate crisis had been diffused, but the emotional toll was heavy. Betrayal's sting ran deep. He pressed his fingertips to his temple, breathing slowly to calm himself. Mallory entered quietly, her gaze sympathetic. "You all right?" she asked gently, stepping toward him. Thomas exhaled. "Yes, just processing. Thank you for everything. I don't know how I missed Alan's double game." She gave him a faint smile. He was adept at hiding it. "We got lucky with that final piece of intel." Thomas nodded. "Someone pointed you in the right direction." Mallory's lips twitched into a smile. "Yes, actually your assistant got a call from someone named Ella Johnson, the waitress from last night. She said she overheard a conversation confirming Alan's plan and wanted to warn you. Obviously, she didn't provide the shell company details, but it put us on alert, so we double-checked certain financial patterns. It was enough to prompt me to run an urgent inquiry. We found Alan's conflict of interest and sabotage attempts by connecting the dots." Thomas felt an unusual warmth bloom in his chest. "Ella Johnson," he repeated softly, as though her name itself was a revelation. "She really did it then. She warned me, even though she had nothing to gain." Mallory shrugged. "She must have a good heart, or maybe she just believes in justice. Either way, she likely saved you from a humiliating coup. We have a good shot at pressing charges against Alan if we want." Thomas fell silent for a moment, remembering the quiet sincerity in Ella's eyes. She was indeed a bright star in a city that often felt consumed by ambition and greed. Early the next morning, Ella walked to work, her mind churning with uncertainty. She'd tried her best to alert Thomas of the conspiracy, but she had no idea how the board meeting had ended. She felt a pang of guilt. Perhaps it had been foolish to intervene in the affairs of a powerful corporation. She dreaded the idea that her call might have done more harm than good, or worse, been ignored entirely. At the staff entrance, her co-worker Marco greeted her, brows raised. "Ella, the boss, said to tell you that you don't need to work the morning shift anymore." Her stomach sank. "What, did I do something wrong?" Marco shook his head, eyes big with curiosity. "No, you have to go see the manager, apparently. Something about a VIP requesting your presence at a private event tonight." Confusion mingled with fear as Ella hurried to the manager's office. She knocked lightly and stepped inside. Jacob Rosen. The restaurant's manager was rifling through a folder. He glanced up with a mixture of excitement and bafflement. "Ella, Mr. Thomas Harrington called me this morning. He said he wants to host a private dinner for some out-of-town guests at the Gilded Lilies tonight, and he specifically requested that you be the lead server for his table. He's apparently insisted on it." Ella's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." Jacob grinned. "No joke. He's paying top dollar, too. He told me to ensure you're well compensated for your service. Of course I agreed it's Thomas Harrington." The swirl of emotions in Ella's mind made her dizzy. "Did he say anything else?" she managed. Jacob shrugged. "Just that you impressed him last night. He wants to thank you, and he asked the restaurant to extend every courtesy. So yeah, the entire staff is on notice. Congratulations, Ella. This is a big deal." Relief, excitement, and anxiety flooded her. "He made it through the betrayal, and he wants to see me again." That evening, as the sky dimmed into a canvas of orange and pink, the Gilded Lilies was transformed for Thomas Harrington's private event. The largest dining room, usually open to the public, was reserved exclusively for him and his guests. Candles flickered on pristine linens. Delicate glassware caught the candlelight, shimmering like tiny stars. Ella smoothed her uniform, trying to quell her nerves. She had served many VIPs before, but none who had personally requested her presence. She discreetly checked her reflection in the mirror behind the bar, ensuring her ponytail was neatly in place. Then the doors swung open. Thomas entered, flanked by a few individuals who appeared to be business colleagues. He wasn't surrounded by an entourage of security. He carried himself with quiet confidence, wearing a tailored suit that accentuated his tall frame. When his eyes swept the room and landed on Ella, he broke into a small but genuine smile. The next hour went by in a formal blur as Ella gracefully brought out amuse-bouche canapés and an array of elegantly plated dishes. Thomas and his companions discussed expansions, philanthropic initiatives, and new collaborations. She overheard tidbits talk of damage control post-Alan Pope, potential new board members, philanthropic expansions in Africa, and so on. Finally, as dessert was being served, Thomas waved Ella over. She approached with cautious politeness, bowing her head. "Yes, Mr. Harrington, is everything to your satisfaction?" He stood gently ushering her away from the table so they could talk privately. His companions, engaged in their own conversation, barely noticed. "Ella," he said with genuine warmth. "First, let me thank you. I heard from Mallory that you tried calling my office yesterday with a crucial warning about Alan. I want you to know how much that meant to me." Ella felt her cheeks heat up. "I was worried you wouldn't believe me, or that I was overstepping." Thomas shook his head. "I believe in gratitude. Your warning nudged us in the right direction. It helped us uncover the paper trail. Alan Pope is out, and the company is secure." That's in no small part thanks to you." A wave of relief washed over Ella. "I'm glad. Really glad." He regarded her quietly as though gauging her spirit. "Your instincts and empathy saved me. I'd like to return that kindness." Before she could respond, he motioned for his assistant, a neat-haired woman named Jenna. Jenna stepped forward, offering Ella an envelope. Its thickness hinted at something substantial. Ella swallowed hard, her heart pounding as she accepted it. Thomas spoke gently. "I want to offer you an opportunity. But first, open the envelope." Inside was a letter of acceptance into a hospitality training program at Gracewood Academy, an institution Thomas funded to help aspiring individuals break into the high-end hotel management industry. It listed a full scholarship living stipend and guaranteed placement in one of Harrington's hotels upon successful completion. Ella stared in disbelief, the printed words swimming before her eyes. "What?" she stammered, glancing up at him. His expression was filled with quiet pride. "I built that academy to give people with talent empathy and drive a chance to move beyond their immediate circumstances. You clearly have a gift for understanding people's needs. You deserve a bigger stage, Ella." Tears pricked her eyes. I can't afford to leave my job." Thomas's smile broadened. "That's all covered. You'll receive a stipend while you study. And there's a guaranteed job waiting for you in one of our premier properties afterward. This is my way of saying thank you, and also investing in someone I see true potential in." Ella's lips trembled with emotion. She could barely speak. This is more than I ever could have dreamed of." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a gesture that felt paternal and caring. "You changed my life in one critical moment, Ella. Let me change yours." That night, after the final guests departed, Ella stood alone in the quiet, candlelit dining room. The hush was comforting, as though the walls themselves braced her for the magnitude of the decision she had to make. She reread the acceptance letter, trying to digest the fact that a scholarship to Gracewood Academy could catapult her from waitress to a managerial role in a global hotel chain. Yet doubt gnawed at her mind. Could she truly leave her steady job? What about her mother, who relied on Ella's monthly support? Was she ready to embark on something so ambitious? Her manager, Jacob, approached, smiling. "You okay?" She nodded, eyes misty. "Just trying to figure out if I deserve this." Jacob chuckled softly. "You deserve every bit of it. I've watched you for years, Ella. You have a knack for hospitality that not many people do. Go get 'em." She thanked him and left for home. The city lights twinkling overhead like 1,000 possibilities. When she arrived at her apartment, she called her mother to share the life-changing news. Her mother, Linda Johnson, nearly cried with pride and excitement. She insisted Ella accept the opportunity. "Don't worry about me, dear," Linda said. "This is your chance to shine." Before Ella drifted to sleep, she found herself recalling the look on Thomas Harrington's face when he handed her the envelope, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and fatherly care. For once, the universe was being kind to them both. Of course, rumors circulated quickly. Within days, some of Ella's co-workers gossiped that she must have seduced Thomas Harrington to receive such a lavish gift. Others speculated that maybe she was an undercover agent or a relative. The speculation stung, but Ella kept her head high. She knew the truth. She had done the right thing by warning Thomas, and the scholarship was his heartfelt gesture of thanks. Still, she couldn't help but feel uneasy about the whispers. It reminded her that stepping into a new realm of wealth and influence might come with a cost. People often misunderstood or envied what they couldn't comprehend. Through it all, Thomas stood by his decision. He visited the Gilded Lilies once more to finalize details with her meeting with her manager to coordinate scheduling so Ella could start her program. He even extended an invitation for her to visit Gracewood Academy's campus the following week. The entire time he maintained a respectful distance, never once making her feel indebted or uncomfortable. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Alan Pope did not go quietly. Though removed from the board, he reached out to the press, feeding them half-truths and allegations. A tabloid story emerged, suggesting that Harrington had bribed a mysterious waitress to fabricate information against Alan in an internal power struggle. The article hinted that Ella was being rewarded for her false testimony with a scholarship and job offers. When Ella got wind of this, she was terrified. She had no experience dealing with media smears. She'd always lived under the radar. Now she feared for her reputation. Would people believe her a liar, Thomas called her soon after the story broke. "Don't worry," he said gently, voice soothing. "We're handling it. We have proof of Alan's wrongdoing. This is just him trying to fling mud in desperation." Despite Thomas's reassurance, the smear campaign weighed on Ella's heart. She hated being the subject of rumors. She had only wanted to do the right thing. Ella visited the Gracewood Academy campus with Thomas's assistant, Jenna, a week later. Located a short train ride from Philadelphia, the academy's lush grounds and stately buildings exuded opportunity. Ella found herself touring top-notch kitchens, hotel suite simulations, and advanced hospitality tech labs. She felt like Alice stepping into Wonderland. Mid-tour, her phone buzzed. A local Philadelphia gossip blog had published a follow-up piece claiming new evidence that Ella was in cahoots with Harrington to orchestrate Alan Pope's downfall. She paused by the Academy's stately entrance, reading the sensational headlines with trembling hands. Anxiety threatened to overwhelm her. Jenna noticed her distress. "Don't let them get to you," she said firmly. "Thomas is already working on a countersuit for defamation if Alan doesn't back off. You're safe. None of these rumors can overshadow the real evidence we have." Despite Jenna's supportive words, Ella still felt a sting. She was a private person, never courting the spotlight. Now her name was being dragged into corporate scandal headlines. For a moment, she considered turning down the scholarship. Maybe retreating from this swirl of drama would be easier. But then she remembered her mother's voice, cheering her on. She recalled the nights she'd dreamed of more than waitressing, of building a meaningful career in hospitality, of making her mother proud. Summoning courage, she decided right then, "I'm going to do this." Thomas Harrington. Noticing Ella's resolve, felt a surge of admiration. He invited her to dinner at a discreet location the following evening, a quiet bistro near Rittenhouse Square. It was not a date, at least not by any formal label. Instead, it felt like a supportive mentor, wanting to ensure his mentee was coping with the new pressures. They sat at a corner table far from prying eyes, the warm glow of a single candle illuminating their faces. Ella confessed her fears about the gossip swirling around them, her concern that people believed she had faked everything for money. Thomas shook his head. "The truth will prevail, Ella. I'll make sure of it. More importantly, you need to focus on your future. Don't let anyone sabotage your dreams." She smiled appreciatively. "I'm just not used to all of this." She gestured vaguely, indicating the swirl of luxury and power that had found its way into her once simple life. Thomas's expression softened. "I get it. I wasn't always a millionaire. My father was a factory worker in Camden, New Jersey. We struggled at times, but he always taught me to dream big and to give back when I was able. His passing fueled my desire to build something meaningful. So I understand how jarring it is to step from one world into another. Ella was surprised by his candid humility. I didn't realize. People paint you as some silver spoon mogul. He offered a rueful chuckle. Tabloids rarely care about the real story. They want drama. But yes, I've worked for everything I have. Now I want to use it for good. They finished their meal discussing philanthropic ideas from sustainable tourism to educational outreach. A quiet synergy flowed between them. Though they came from different worlds, they shared a genuine compassion for others. During the weeks that followed, Ella made progress. She enrolled in her first set of courses at Gracewood Academy, balancing her time between classes and part-time shifts at the Gilded Lilies. Her mother's health also improved, bolstered by the knowledge that her daughter's future was looking bright. But the aftermath of Alan's downfall continued to cast shadows. Alan filed a lawsuit against Thomas, alleging wrongful termination and defamation. He also named Ella in the suit, claiming her false testimony had led to his ouster. Though Thomas's legal team assured her it was baseless, the looming specter of a court battle frightened Ella. She had never set foot in a courtroom. One evening, as she stepped out of a hospitality strategy class, a reporter cornered her near the academy's entrance. The reporter, microphone in hand, thrust a camera in Ella's face, firing off invasive questions. "Ella Johnson, is it true you fabricated evidence against Alan Pope for a scholarship? How does it feel to be used as Harrington's pawn?" Panic gripped her. She froze, mortified. A few students stopped to stare. Her cheeks flamed. Before she could muster a coherent response, a tall figure emerged from inside the building. Thomas Harrington himself, who had been in a meeting with the Academy's dean. He stepped between Ella and the reporter, eyes steely. "That's enough," Thomas said in a low, firm voice. "Miss Johnson is under my protection. If you harass her again, you'll be hearing from our legal counsel." The reporter tried to protest, but Thomas calmly ushered Ella away. They ducked into a waiting town car, hearts pounding in unison. "You okay?" Thomas asked once the car doors closed. Ella nodded, though tears threatened to spill. "I never asked for this." His gaze was compassionate. "I know. None of this is your fault. I won't let Alan or the media destroy you, Ella. You have my word." In the midst of the legal chaos, an unlikely ally emerged, Catherine Delgado, the senior board member. Catherine reached out to Ella one afternoon, requesting a meeting at a quaint tea shop. Ella hesitated, but eventually agreed. She remembered Catherine defending philanthropic endeavors during the board meeting, so she seemed a reasonable figure. Over fragrant cups of chamomile tea, Catherine offered heartfelt thanks. "Though I've only heard bits and pieces, I know you played a part in alerting Thomas to Alan's betrayal. If you hadn't intervened, we might have lost an honest leader." Ella appreciated her kind words. Catherine also insisted that as a board member, she would publicly stand by Ella if the lawsuit proceeded. She had no illusions about how vicious Alan could be, but she assured Ella that truth was on their side. This gesture bolstered Ella's confidence. She had more than Thomas's protection. She now had a respected figure on the board, willing to defend her integrity. As the lawsuit inched toward a hearing, Thomas decided to hold a press conference. Mallory advised him to get ahead of the narrative, present the evidence of Alan's sabotage, and highlight Ella's innocence in the matter. Though Ella was terrified to stand in front of cameras, she agreed to appear if it would help expose the truth. They held the press conference in the lobby of Harrington Towers. A half-dozen cameras and numerous reporters gathered, microphones extended expectantly. Thomas took the podium, first voice steady, explaining in detail how Alan Pope had funneled resources into competing ventures, undermining Gracewood Suites. Then Mallory presented the documents, including email trails and financial records, to the press. Finally, with encouragement from Thomas and Catherine, Ella gave a short statement. She spoke softly but clearly, recounting how she'd merely overheard suspicious conversations and felt morally obligated to warn Thomas. "I never asked for money or favors," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "I did what I believed was right. Mr. Harrington offered me a scholarship to continue growing in an industry I love. I'm grateful, but I never expected any reward." Thomas placed a supportive hand on her shoulder at the conclusion of her statement. Flashes illuminated the moment a waitress turned scholarship recipient, standing beside one of the city's most influential figures, united in truth. In the weeks following the press conference, Alan Pope's smear campaign lost steam. Exposed for his duplicity, his legal arguments faltered. The day of the preliminary hearing arrived, and the tension was palpable. Dressed in a modest navy blue suit, Ella clung to Mallory's instructions and the moral support of Thomas by her side. Inside the courtroom, Alan's lawyers tried to paint Ella as an unreliable witness. They grilled her on whether she'd been promised anything in exchange for her warning. Calmly, Ella reiterated the truth. Mallory then deftly shifted focus to Alan's well-documented sabotage, brandishing the emails that indicted him. The judge appeared unimpressed by Alan's attempts to deflect blame. By the end of the hearing, it was clear which way the tide had turned. Alan's case against Harrington Ventures and Ella was deemed without merit. The judge dismissed several of his claims outright. A wave of relief washed over Ella as she stepped out of the courthouse, free from the burden of further legal entanglement. Thomas walked beside her, offering a quiet, triumphant grin. "It's done," he said simply. "You're free." With the lawsuit behind them, Ella found a new sense of peace. She poured her energy into the Gracewood Academy program, devouring lessons on hotel operations, culinary arts, event management, and financial analysis. She found she had a particular knack for creating unforgettable guest experiences, combining her empathy with strategic thinking. Thomas continued to check in on her progress. Often he'd invite her to philanthropic gatherings, introducing her to influential figures in hospitality and charity. Ella felt overwhelmed, yet inspired by the possibilities. Each event broadened her horizons, showing her that with dedication and the right support, she truly could make a difference. Finally, on a crisp autumn evening, Ella completed her first semester at Gracewood Academy with stellar marks. Thomas asked her to meet him at a newly opened branch of Gracewood Suites in Manhattan, a shimmering hotel with a breathtaking skyline view. Nervous excitement churned in her belly as she traveled by train to New York. When she arrived, a concierge greeted her with a warm smile, ushering her to the top floor. Her breath caught in her throat when the elevator doors slid open, revealing an elegant lounge furnished with plush seating, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the vibrant city lights twinkling beyond. Thomas stood by the windows, hands clasped. "Ella," he said, beckoning her forward. "Come look at this view." She joined him, marveling at the endless sea of skyscrapers. The city pulsed with an electric energy. He spoke softly. "I wanted to congratulate you on your outstanding performance at the Academy. I also have a special announcement." His assistant Jenna stepped forward, presenting Ella with a sleek binder. Inside was a contract an appointment as the assistant manager at this very Gracewood Suites location, effective upon her graduation. The salary was far beyond anything she'd ever imagined for a first managerial role. Her jaw dropped in astonishment. Thomas smiled. "We believe in nurturing talent from within. You've proven yourself with your empathy, quick thinking, and resilience. This is your next step if you choose it." Tears welled up in Ella's eyes as she traced the letters on the contract. "Thomas, I don't know what to say. This is enormous." He placed a gentle hand over hers. "Your kindness changed my life at a time I was vulnerable. I want to repay that kindness tenfold. You deserve this, Ella. Never doubt that." She blinked back tears, scarcely able to speak. This was the shocking gift, the opportunity that would forever alter the course of her life. Indeed, in that shimmering penthouse lounge, she felt the axis of her world shift. Months later, after completing her program and finalizing her arrangements, Ella packed her belongings and moved to Manhattan. She brought her mother along, settling Linda into a comfortable apartment nearby. With the support of Harrington Ventures and her own blossoming ambition, Ella stepped into her new position at Gracewood Suites. Every day she walked through the opulent lobby greeting guests with genuine warmth. She organized staff training sessions, emphasizing empathy and personal touches that left customers feeling truly cared for. Under her guidance, the hotel soared in guest satisfaction ratings. Back in Philadelphia, the Gilded Lily's staff still spoke of the legend of Ella Johnson, the waitress who'd warned a millionaire of betrayal and received a life-changing gift. Whenever she visited the manager, Jacob teased her about her fancy new life, though always with pride in his eyes. As for Thomas Harrington, he continued to spearhead philanthropic projects and guide his expanding hotel empire. He periodically visited Ella's location, observing her managerial flair with fatherly pride. The scars of Alan Pope's betrayal had made him cautious, but ironically they also led him to discover a gem in Ella. He still believed in rewarding empathy and moral courage. In a quiet moment, months later, they sat in the lounge of Gracewood Suites with a cup of herbal tea. The city glittered beneath them. Ella reflected on the twists of fate that had brought her here. A lonely diner, a worried millionaire, a phone call to an office, a newly uncovered corporate conspiracy, and an unwavering act of kindness that blossomed into an extraordinary destiny. Thomas raised his teacup in a toast to the future, to second chances, bold warnings, and life-altering gifts. Ella clinked her cup softly against his. To kindness, she added with a smile, the spark that lights the path we can't always see. Their cups chimed, and in that melodic ring, they sealed a bond that transcended mere business or chance, a bond of trust, compassion, and shared triumph over betrayal. That brings us to the end of our incredible true-to-life drama, a story where a waitress and a millionaire found common ground in the most unlikely of places. Ella's timely warning changed Thomas Harrington's fate, exposing a web of betrayal that nearly tore apart his empire. In turn, Thomas rewarded her courage with an opportunity that opened doors to a future far beyond her wildest dreams. This story reminds us that empathy, sincerity, and boldness can break down barriers between people from vastly different worlds. A single act of kindness can indeed alter destinies. If you were inspired by Ella's integrity and Thomas's generosity to take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need a spark of hope, and subscribe to our channel for more riveting tales. Your support helps us continue bringing you real-life stories filled with drama, inspiration, and unforgettable twists.